Check one, two, three. Check one, two, three. Happy Veterans Day. So I'm just checking my phone to make sure. See it's so obviously I'm out today, so I wanted to do a quick compliance check. I'm sure a few people roll in or they can catch it on the replay. Let's see. So we're getting there. Yep, there we are. Let me see if I hear me. Yep, there we go. So let's go and get started. And sure people come in. You got a question? Just drop it in the. What's up, Gail? Thanks for joining me. Just drop it in the chat if you got any cybersecurity questions. You see the thumbnail? I'm trying to get a little better on my thumbnail game. Hello, hello, hello. So we're gonna talk about cybersecurity compliance for life science companies, pharmaceutical drug companies, FDA compliance for computer systems. Um, I like to do that because that's the next level of security, right? So we talk about security, hardening, locking down, Active Directory, all that good stuff. But when you roll it up to, it's usually for some kind of compliance, being PCI for credit cards, HIPAA for health, FISMA for DoD. So I like to do this because that lets you know what cybersecurity is and how it rolls up into and helps companies. And most people know I do federal compliance. So what does that mean? Reporting to a federal government, and the federal government, of course, will be FDA. Um, Blind guy, his wife, and their life. Good day, good day. So that's what we're gonna go over. Once again, I do that for the federal. So I like to talk about compliances. And there's a lot of jobs in the federal space, especially for compliance. So let's go through it. I did a quick little slideshow. So good practices is GxP in the pharmaceutical industry. What's up, Ty? How you doing, man? So we're just gonna walk through it. To be honest, I have a interview with the venture capitalist to talk about federal compliance for a pharmaceutical company. So I just thought I would go ahead and do a slideshow. Right, that helps me and it helps you. Um, so we're talking about. And I got a couple jobs off of Indeed, so I was kind of shocked with the dollar amount that we're paying these people. Good thing I always on the money move. So when it comes to if you know compliance, they'll let you in because you understand compliance. So you can tell the system guys what they need is a secure to get in there. What's up, Angel? How you doing, man? So let's get on to it. Like I said, this is for pharmaceutical industry. GxP is a quality standard regulation for a specific field of activity. It revolves around two main regulatory pillars. So when we talk about regulatory, of course, we're in that government realm, that government through accountability and traceability. Right? Accountability refers to demonstrate what each person contributes to the product. Traceability needs to know ways to construct the entire history. Right? So when you're talking about drugs and you moving them from a factory to a hospital, right, or even factory to overseas and back, right, you got to have traceability to make sure nobody's tampered with the drugs or messed the drugs up or didn't mix them correctly, right? So that's why it's so big in the pharmaceutical industry, right? The X stands for a particular field where there's manufacturing, distribution, laboratory, and so on. So this is for the whole pharmaceutical industry. Of course, we're going to drill down to the IT part and specifically the cybersecurity part. The guidelines are generally similar to country to country. Each country has its own regulatory, but for many manufacturers, right? So, what is the purpose of it? Exists to protect consumers like you and me. Guidelines are created to enforce by nation or international regulatory agencies like the United States Food and Drug Administration, right? And there's a global council for that to ensure the product is research projects are done safely, and in the end, the products you use are safe. Right? So that's really what we're talking about, right? And two is a lot of that's going to deal with the computer system and how it operates, how you control it, what you track, who you let log in and who you let log off, right? So all that's going to play into the cybersecurity space. So when I was looking around, I went on Indeed. Shout out to the women in Linux. Shout out to Black Heights. So I went out there and I just was looking at jobs on Indeed. You can see it. So this global system, enterprise system, it's remote and they're paying $92.85 an hour. I was like, ooh, that's a good rate, right? It's a global enterprise system compliance team responsible for implementing and sustaining a world-class quality management system, ensuring that the client meets all customer and regulatory agency, like we talked about, the GMP regulatory requirements and expectations. All right, I'm not gonna read the whole thing. I'll actually put the links in the description at the bottom, but the big deal is CSV, right? The validation of the system that it meets FDA requirements. So that's a big deal. But I was surprised with the rate for $92.85. I might apply to that one tonight to see if I can get it right. That's $200,000 a year, right? That's that's a crazy amount of money. But I've been talking to Black Heights and Tam for women in Linux, so that's what it is. Here's another one I just found: medical device manufacturer. Once again, a big part of that is talking about the computer system. Leader in providing effective consultation and remediation services worldwide, pharmaceutical, biotechnology, and biotech. So combination of vitro diagnostics, modeling technology range. This depicts software as a medical device, right? That's where the computer system comes in. This was from $100 an hour. So I guess that's the starting point. It's full, part-time, and contract. So once again, I was surprised with the with those dollar amounts for those particular two jobs, and I'll put those Indeed jobs in the description after the broadcast. But let's go through the good practice in the pharmaceutical industry. What does that mean? Right. So once again, the GxP in the pharmaceutical, it's got good manufacturing, clinical, laboratory, storage, distribution, and review practice. Right. The review part is where the IT is going to come in, and we're going to look at the system and see how it works, and just lock it down. Right. So, in a nutshell. So the manufacturing process guidelines are recommended by agencies for the authorization and control of manufacturing of products such as drug, medical devices, and activities. Adhering to the guidelines ensure the agencies about the quality of the product. Right. So that's the MP. Counterfeiting medicine, which is, I guess, it's a big deal. I didn't realize how big it was, where people are actually making fake medicines and injecting them in the pipeline and charging full price for drugs that really don't do what they're supposed to do, even for cancer patients. That's the one that threw me out, that somebody would actually create fake drugs and sell them. But I guess for them, it's no different than Gucci, Prada, Fendi, or any other product, right? It's just a drug, right? So the drug supply is among the safest in the world in the United States. We have federal and state laws that create closed drug distribution to help domestic products. Counterfeit medicines is fake medicine that may be harmful to your health. Incidents of counterfeit drugs in the United States are rare and relatively large number of prescription drugs used. FDA remains vigilant to protect the United States drug supply from counterfeit and other substandard drugs. It's not a big deal, but it's still a thing, so I have to be careful for that. One of the new technologies, shout out to engineering cannabis, he's not here, but blockchain. That's one way you can use blockchain. How blockchain can put a stop to counterfeit drugs. Pharmaceutical companies have tried to monitor their supply and verify the authenticity of supply chain, but full protection has been difficult until now. Blockchain is a decentralized, trusted, anonymous, transparent, and tamper-proof. Blockchain technology can offer full protection from counterfeit drugs entering the supply chain. Its merits lies in the inherent features which allow data to no longer be stored centralized. Instead, the data can be stored on a distributed network of nodes in a decentralized database, right? Oh, there it is. Shout out engineering cannabis is right in there. So we talked about that blockchain could be used to handle counterfeit drugs, and that's part of the technology. And two, the decentralization of it means part of the database could be in Africa, third world countries, and when we supply them, that way the whole chain would validate that if that drug was good or not. Now, so shout out to engineering cannabis. He's always getting me on the AI and the blockchain. Shout out to person-centered cyber entering the building. So, but yeah, so there's things we need to look at for us as a community, and us just get into those jobs and those levels of jobs. I mean, I showed you two jobs earlier that were costing around $200,000 a year. So if we get in those new technologies and those new domains, right, we can get there, right? Once again, we're doing the pharmaceutical industry, talking about compliance for that. The good clinical practices, international quality standards for conference for harmonization, the state of the clinical trials regulation required testing on human subjects, standard outline the requirements of clinical trials, roles and responsibility. So once again, that's not part of the computer system, but all that data you would do inside the trials will go into your computer system if you're trying to find um, a cancer drug or the new C19 drug, right? You want to keep that stuff private. And if you got the killer molecules, you don't want anybody to hack your formula out, right? I used to work for a Fortune 500 pharmaceutical company 20 years ago. They had one drug that they made $4 billion a year on. It was crazy. They was giving 25% over 25% raises every year, right? It was just a crazy amount of money. Um, I was a consultant at the time, so I didn't benefit from it, but I guess I benefited because they paid for it. But those drugs can make an astronomical amount of money if you find the correct one, right? And now with artificial intelligence and the speed of data, you can run more molecules to hopefully find a drug quickly and make the killer money. Now the laboratory part, once again, standards set by the FDA, non-clinical lab tests, studies conducted assessing the safety and efficacy of the product. So the standards which will define a framework for non-clinical studies and they should be performed. Once again, from a cybersecurity perspective, if they get FDA money, we got to lock down the system at a certain level, right, to protect the data. That's what we're going to get to, and how the FDA pays you to, like I said, protect the data from how they want you to do it when you're shipping drugs. If not, right, they won't let you make that drug or tell you that drug is invalid, right? So, what is X compliance? It's a collection of regulatory guidelines created to ensure bio and pharmaceutical products are safe, meets intended use, and here the quality process during manufacturing, control stage, and distribution. And part of that is, of course, coming from the FDA or coming from HIPAA, right? When you create drugs or sell drugs or move drugs or even do compounds, right? They want to make sure those are safe. So from GxP, the computer part is the CFR 21 Part 11. Right, manufacturing must occur in a controlled environment that prevents cross contamination. Software used in a GxP environment must adhere to CFR 21 Part 11 compliant. The software requirements. The software must meet the XP requirements if it's used in a compliant environment or connected to a validated instrumentation. It may be the case for the pharmaceutical development and manufacturing. Your customers will tell you if their labs are GX compliant. Chances are, if you're selling into discovery, do not, then it's not a concern for you. The GFC Part 11 compliance is necessary if the results from the software are sent directly or electronically to the FDA or regulatory bodies, right? So if you're sending stuff directly to the FDA, or if the FDA contacts you or sends you drugs or looks at your efficacy of your drugs, then you have to adhere to their compliance, right? AlphaGo and AlphaFold, new AI for medicine, making big money. Shout out to engineering cannabis. But two is a lot of times too, even if you're not in the FDA or regulatory bodies, if you sell to a hospital and a hospital has to do HIPAA, you have to do it right because you were in their pipeline, you were in their data flow, right? So when you if you're touching anybody that's HIPAA, any of their vendors or their clients or anybody they do business with has to be at the same level of security as the primary vendor, right? So a lot of times, the big companies you work with have to apply to these rules. So you, as their vendor, I call them sub vendors sometimes, has to apply to those rules, right? That gets a lot of small vendors struggling. Like I said, I got a call with a venture capitalist, and we're supposed to talk about the FDA rules. He's supposed to have the next big compound, right? So we'll see. We'll see what it is, you know. So once again, the CFR 21 Part 11 compliance. This is the security part. So I just facts. It could be incorrect. But so these are the parts for the computer system, just standard discussion, the overall view, interpretation, and a big five parts: validation of your data, auditing trail, right, of two chains, legacy system, copies of records, how long do you keep them, when you have to store, and record retention, right, how long do you have to keep those records. It is a version of CMC, person centered cyber. When I looked at it, it's a stripped down version. If the It's the FDA's version of CMC. CMC, of course, goes to DoD. You would think all the government big time regulators would to get together would have one standard like NIST, CMC, FERPA for education. Once again, CFR 20 for pharmaceuticals, FISMA for DoD. There's so many compliance, but CGIS for state police and FBI. So like each large regulatory bodies have their own security reviews, which I try to have an understanding of each one because that's the next level in cybersecurity, right? Why are you doing all this hardening? Why are you doing all this lockdown? Why are you doing a zero trust network? It's so you can comply with DoD, FISMA, FERPA, CMC, CFR 21 for pharmaceutical, right? So each one of those hardenings you do is going to roll up to a compliance, right? You think we would harmonize and just give one for for the whole nation? Um, of course, AWS has their version of it, so I always start with there. AWS has health and life sciences. It has genomics and life science since in 2014. They have startups, university and government institutions, as well as healthcare payers and providers. So once again, Amazon Web Services gives you the different components to use, but you have to configure them right to meet the CFR 21 for FDA. Once again, I do more NIST and FISMA for DoD in the cloud. So it's a different version of that. Like I said, I want to be comfortable. Here's some of the big vendors already into AWS's web service cloud. Um, all of them have 2021 at the bottom. Anthem, of course, they got hacked about 3 or 4 years ago. Cofactor Genomics and LifeBiz, right? So if you go out there, they have 100 companies that meets those type of requirements. Um, so I'm actually going to walk through and set one of those up in AWS and actually configure it and actually run a penetration test on it. I was going to reach out to Alpha Cyber or Gay Bays in that realm, or Kenny Conjo. There's a lot of bros into the penetration red team type thing. Me and Pearson Center Cyber talked about it. It seems like only cool people does penetration. I'm more blue team, they red team, right? So once again, like I said, I probably configure it and reach out to one of those guys. I'm sure they would love to hack one of my setups, right, to see if they can to get through. But for me, it's just us getting better as a team, us getting better as a group, us getting better and learning from each other, right? And different techniques to actually get in there and attack each other, right? So we're gonna do official red team, blue team in 2022, probably the first quarter. Like I said, I'm getting my AWS set up and my certs I needed to get down. So we'll set up a contest between us and them because I just did a video of the pawn test in Austin in 2021. I think it was last month. A couple people like made almost $1 million hacking into phones. Somebody broke into Sony and got a 0-day hack. I think it's worth $20,000 if you get a 0-day hack from one of those. So if we practice on each other, then when we go over there, we should be pretty good. So once again, AWS cloud security infrastructure, I'd be architected to be one of the most flexible and secure cloud vendors, provides extremely highly scalable and flexible. The infrastructure is built and managed not only according to security best practices and standards, but also with unique needs of clouds in mind. It's monitored and protected 24/7, right? We all knew that, right? But the thing we need to figure out is how do we take AWS components and make sure they're certified for good practice in that CFR 21 data, right? So we want to make sure we can get that set up and make sure we can pass, make sure we can get that $100 an hour, right? So that's what we're going to do. That'll be cool to see the AWS up. Oh yeah, most definitely. Like I said, I'm actually working on a couple of my AWS certs, so I'm actually walk through the setup, verify the setup, and actually show which buttons and everything to click. And video recorded on the spot, and we'll talk about it as a group or a team. Blind guy, his wife, and their life. Right. I told everybody I'm talking in 2021 and 2022. We're gonna be labbing. We're gonna lab every day. Shout out to Dewan. So we're gonna put it in production. And once again, I'm gonna invite the guys. I'm sure they'll come and attack it. Alpha Cyber, Kenny Conjo, Gabe A. So I mean, there's a ton of red team guys in here that loves attacking. So once again, this is a standard AWS shared model. What's in orange is what AWS is responsible for, depending on if you're infrastructure, platform, or software as a service. And even though you're in their cloud, the customer in blue is responsible for their setup, right? Customer data, platform, application identity and access management, operating system, network, and firewall configuration, right? So even if you do software as a service, you still got to figure out what virtual private network you in. Is it going to be private or open to the internet? Where you're going to put it? You're going to do a standard 3 tier or 4 tier. All that configurations is set up for the user or company to do. Right. And when Capital One got hacked because they let their database be open to the internet, right? AWS told Congress it worked as designed because Capital One sucked at designing, right? Um, so like you said, we still are responsible for setting it up, even though it's in AWS. I get a lot of small agencies or customers trying to do business with the government client I work with. They go, we're on AWS. I go, so you still got to configure it. How's your network configured? How is your privilege accounts? Are you using VPN or there's a ton of things you as the vendor has to set up before my client uses it that you're still responsible for. Even if you're in AWS, Azure, or Google, you still have some configuration to do, right? If you look at the top shared controls which apply to both infrastructure layer and the customer layers, but in completely separate context and perspective. Patch management, AWS is responsible for patching and fixing flaws within the infrastructure, but you're responsible for patching your guest OS and applications. Configuration management, AWS maintains the configuration of its infrastructure, but you're responsible for configuring your own guest operating system, databases, and applications. Awareness and training. AWS trains AWS employees, but you got to train your own employees, right? So that tells you some of the separation where AWS is going to take care of some stuff and you're going to take care of stuff. Most small companies don't know that. Most small companies tell me, I'm in AWS and I'm good. And I tell my boss, those people don't know what they're doing. Do not buy their product. And I hear that a ton. Like, we're in AWS, we're good. That would be a no. Right. Customer specific controls what you are ultimately responsible for. Once again, database management, for instance, the placement of data on Amazon S3, where you are activate encryption, where certain controls are customer specific. AWS strives provides you with the tools and resources to make implementation easy. Right. So Amazon S3, of course, is this, but built in there is a built-in web server, which I thought was kind of unique, which I'm not a big fan of. And also, if you put your raw data on AWS, it's in a flat file format. You can do a data dictionary describing the flat format. You can query your data straight off an S3 disk like it's a database, right? So, is that data actively encryption? Is that S3 opening up to the internet, or is that private? So, all that stuff you control in your S3, right? Then from federal standpoint, is that encryption FIS 140-2? There's a lot of government nomenclature, basically just meaning you sent it to the government for the review. So you got to validate each one of those services used by Amazon to make sure they have the level of compliance that you need for the business you're trying to do. AWS Quality Management, once again, is under GxP. It's part of manufacturing, regulatory products. The quality assurance includes appropriate assessment of the cloud service suppliers like AWS to meet the obligation. AWS Quality Management System, you may use AWS artifacts to access additional documents under an NDA if you're a quality system. For a deeper description of below, AWS provides information, concepts, and components for AWS for the GxP. So basically is AWS says, we give you documentations, an NDA, non-discriminatory document, basically just saying if you get this data, you can't share it with anybody else. I sign an NDA, NDA probably every other week, right? Because I review so many systems. And I've actually looked at some AWS proprietary stuff. It's off the charts, unbelievable from a security perspective. Once again, you're responsible for the risk assessment of your environment. You're responsible for the pipeline, anything connected to your environment. So they're going to give you the documentations for you to do your risk assessment. You and your company are responsible for that, right? And here we go. Some of the software development approach. And two is if you create your own software, right, you got to go through and make sure you're meeting the GxP and the FDA regulations for that if you're a pharmaceutical company. So you got to talk about your risk assessment, threat modeling, software design, security code reviews, security testing, and vulnerability and penetration testing. Right? So this is what you need to do if you're developing custom secure software, secure coding, right, for your application. A lot of companies develop their own software in house. If they're developing their own software, the FDA said these are the things you need to have in place to make sure your software reaches the kind of compliance we need to do. Right? Those are normal for any like person centers like CMC, FISMA, DoD. They all have some level of that embedded into their certifications for their products. Quality procedures. AWS implements formal, documented policies and procedure that provides guidance for operation, information security within an organization. AWS environment policies address purpose, scope, roles, responsibility, and management, and commitment. All policies are maintained in the location that is accessible by employees. Right. So once again, AWS is responsible for your infrastructure, hardware, and maybe OS. They have the policies for their part of what they're responsible for. Your company needs additional policies, right? For what you're responsible for. We just look back at that, right? Shared responsibilities, AWS versus the customer. You as the customer needs policies and procedures for what you're doing internally to meet those requirements, right? Let's see. Electronic records. Signatures for GxP are enforced by U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, contain Title I of Code Federal Regulations, 21 CFR, contains requirements for computer systems that create, modify, maintain, archive, retrieve, distribute electronic records and electronic signatures in support of a GxP regulated activities in EU or Intralex Volume 4. Good manufacturing products, Annex 11, computerized systems. Part 11 was created to permit the adoption of new information technologies by FDA regulated life science organizations, while simultaneously provide a framework to ensure that the GxP data is trustworthy and reliable. There is no GxP certification for commercial clouds such as AWS. Right, so that means you're responsible for validating AWS part and your part, right? A lot of times when you do like person sign, CMC is already approved in AWS Cloud. FedRAMP and FISMA is already approved. So the government came in and actually validated their hardware and VMs of AWS that they know they already meet those particular compliances, but not for GxP for FDA, right? One of the concerns for regulated enterprise customers is how to qualify and demonstrate control of your system, which is much of the responsibility is now shared with the supplier. Qualification strategies to ensure those questions, an overarching validation plan, a strategy to employ various tactics to address regulatory needs for customers. Right. So when we come in or the company comes in, we're going to validate that this AWS setups meets the FDA requirement, right, for those customers. So when they put their data in there and we configure the VPC and we pick the database and we pick the data lake and we pick the where we're going to put it at and how we're going to put it, right? We as the expert in cybersecurity, right, we have to sign off on that. So this is the slideshow for that, right? Once again, it shows you customer accountability. is the is the whole slide. I like this slide, right? So that's the customer accountability, right? Then we talk about customer responsibility is the application, the building blocks, and the landing zones we created of how we're getting the data in, how we're doing data lakes, how we sending data to the FDA, right? The AWS responsibility is the orange, right? Which is going to be the infrastructure, webcams, cameras, tape backups, right? All that's AWS responsibility, customer responsibility. But we're accountable to make sure AWS is doing it right, and we validate and we test it right. So we got the other big blue for the whole accountability, right? We own it, we got it. That's why those people were getting paid, and I'll show those at the end again. That's why those two job descriptions was getting paid $100 an hour because the customer's accountable for the whole setup, right? So. Um, Then supplier assessment and management. What we should look at internal if we're outsourcing, and what should we look like internal if we're doing these activities inside infrastructure, qualification, software development. If we're developing our own internal software, or if we're having somebody developed, right, then we need to make sure they're doing these things appropriately for the FDA, right? Software development change management, release management, configuration management, supplier management, training, which we talked about, and system security, right? That's my channel. How do we know it's locked down? How do we know China or Russia's not going to come in and steal our super secret formula we're released to make the billions of dollars, right? We got to make sure the security's tight. Right? That's what we came in, and that's what my channel is about. How good is really the security of it? And this is the big part right here, customer system validation, CSV. You must still perform customer computer system validation activities, even if the application is running in the cloud. In fact, the overall arching qualification strategy we have laid out in this paper has ensured that the CSV process can finally be the same as before and has become more difficult as the application teams and thorough introduced cloud technology, right? So how do we do system validation, right? How do we come in, right, and validate that the system will meet the FDA regulation? Like that's the big deal, and that's what we're going to do when we start labbing in AWS and setting these type of systems up for compliance, right? And going through these compliances and checking those boxes off, right, to make sure that we comply. We talked about landing zones for when apps come in or different things. Regulated landing zone, one of the main functionality of landing zone is provide a solid foundation for development teams to build on and address as many regulatory requirements as possible, thus removing this responsibility from the development teams. Right? If you have a development team, they just want to develop. They don't really want to talk about security in different parts. So we got to have the environment set up for them so it's easy to use and they can really just start developing. Right. IT infrastructure control and compliance guidance documents following platform-based approach to qualifications of IT infrastructure, which align perfectly with the customer needs and qualified landing zone. One of those AWS products is called AWS Control Tower. Provides the easiest way to set up and govern a new secure location for the developers, right? So that's one thing we're definitely going to set up uh, probably in December, to be honest. I've been doing a lot of AWS and studying for some certs, so I'm gonna start setting it up. Like once again, we're gonna start labbing more every day. So AWS Control Tower is one of the things you need to set up to make it easier for you to qualify for the FDA certification and regulation, right? Part of that is tool and automation. Many clusters include common tooling to your landing zone so they can qualify and validate once. The common tooling is also within the shared service account. For example, standard tooling around requirements management, test management. CI/CD needs to be qualified and validated, right? Continuous integration and continuous deployment. How do you do that responsibly? And really, it's just not really about the pharmaceutical. That's still going to be the same if you in anything HIPAA, FERPA, FISMA for DoD. You're going to need those type of documents and reports coming out of your thing. So the two scenarios when we start about doing this in real life and in contingency thing is right. Describe two scenarios for approaching platform qualification. First scenario is independent of any specific application. Instead, consider generic requirements for the platform or the landing zone. right? We setting up AWS, the developers are not there, but we setting it up generically in AWS, so we know those features are put together and that we can use them and that they're valid. The second time is where the requirements of the platform is derived directly from the application that runs on the platform. A lot of vendors will tell you we have FDA compliant software. Just put it up in AWS and right, you will be valid. Right, so there's a couple ways to do it. Right? I'm always more scenario one. All right, because the reason I like scenario one is it's generic. It's our platform. We should have this for our whole company, not have one piece of software about the vendor. If we're a pharmaceutical company and that's what we do, our whole infrastructure needs to be set up to handle FDA requirements, right? And harmonize that with HIPAA, right? Those are be our two biggest ones. So we want to set it up for the whole company, not just for the system that's getting FDI data. When you log in for customer service, right? We just saw Robinhood get hacked, right? So you log as customer service and you VPN to the flat network, right? Because you're doing customer tickets, right? That should be FDA certified and approved. Where we keep our super secret drug formula in a three-tier zero trust network, right? That's going to be different and where we put our tickets and how we get back there. And of course, we're going to have an architect. We're going to have some database people, some programmers, right? How do they MFA to get back there to write their programs to where their code is, right? And once their code get into production, who monitors production, right? You got DevOps and DevOps what privileges do we give those users? What can they get to and what can they see, right? That's all part of setting it up independent specifically for your application or your organization. Once again, the customer validation, that's kind of what we're talking about when you talk about compliance. With the solid and regulatory compliant foundation for the supplier access and landing zone, you can look and improve the computer system validation, standard operating procedures. Most customers already have existing SOPs and computer system validation. Those are the building blocks approach described earlier. And basically, how do you shift them and get them into the cloud, right? How do you get on-prem in cloud and take the best parts of the cloud, right? So you can save money, spin up the elasticity of it, meaning if I bought two servers and I need three servers, right? Amazon will just spin it up per use, and when I don't need the third one, it drops on the Pacific hit rate or count rate, right? It's just gonna disappear and I'm gonna stop paying for it, right? Those definitely are the advantages of the cloud that you want to definitely take advantage of. And like I said, we're just gonna kind of wrap it up. So this is the part where you take the FDA controls, map them to your security plan, and map them to the AWS infrastructure. So I just did one, and this is what it would look like in real life. Then when we set this up, AWS up in the future, that's how we'll map it actually back to the compliance control for that particular compliance, which of course is the FDA. So if we look at E, maybe I need to make it bigger. It says use a secure computer-generated timestamp for audit trails, so independently records the date and time of operator entries, the actions, create, modify, delete of electronic records. How would you do that, right? The middle column it just says AWS maintains a centralized repository, provide core logs of archival function available for internal use of AWS service teams, leveraging S3, logging, front-end analysis tool, search logs, right? So what does that actually mean when you're using AWS? So in AWS, I'm just going to skip around. Verification of implementation of audit trails. AWS provides the ability to properly configure and use service offerings to log those trails. And some of those service offerings would be, of course, AWS Cloud Trails, AWS Cloud Watch Logs, AWS's Cloud Trails, any of those AWS services, you can tell it to write in AWS Cloud Trails, which would say you logged into this database, you deleted this record, you updated, you changed this log so these people can see it, right? You can log all that stuff in AWS, and you just click on a lot of buttons, and that logging will happen. CloudWatch logs will tell you for these particular events. One of the things is your disk gets up to 90% full. You just send an email to your operation team and your security team, right? That your thing is 90% true. Operations team is going to get with the developers to to delete something, you're going to send it to your security team, because if it's a denial of service attack, right, your logs are going to start filling up quick. So that'll give the security teams heads up to be like, what's generating these logs, right? Is it a DDoS attack or what's going on, right? Also part of the AWS offerings, you can do AWS API, meaning you can make your program logs. They got development toolkits. AWS Cloud Trails can source IP address calls to and from, what calls are recurred, the application API. If you got automated stuff in there, it can take advantage of that. It could log stuff from the S3 buckets, data events representing get, delete, and other objects for S3 buckets. So from FDA, once again, compliance thing, right? Their thing was uh, keep your auto logs locked down, timestamp, record, and the action. AWS says, okay, any AWS service we have, you can cut those on and start monitoring those logs, right? So that's how you do traceability, right? This is the FDA requirement. This is how we doing them in AWS, right? We document it like this, so when the audit team comes in for for FDA, they would ask for that documentation, and we would have the cross map to see how that looks. And the cool thing too is when you do this, you learn a lot about AWS, because it'll tell you, okay, these are the things you need to set up in AWS Cloud Trail. This is the thing you need to set up in AWS CloudWatch. These are the things you need to set up in the VPC logs. So as you go through these compliance setups, right, you're learning what you can do in AWS to make it more sufficient and equipped for, because you, of course, you're doing federal compliance. But if you're a small company, right, you'll start learning things you need to do as a small company if you get hacked, right? So those are just some of the features of the good practice part from the FDA, and the other part of that was the CFR 21.11, which was the FDA requirements for you to set up in AWS. Once again, we're definitely going to start doing that in the future, so we can actually really start learning AWS. For me, that's the biggest gorilla still in the industry. So that's kind of, and I'm a Java guy and Unix guy, and AWS is actually more prevalent for those particular things. So once again, I'm gonna put these links in there. This is a quality system global enterprise system job at $92.85 an hour. So it actually just came out yesterday, I believe. So once again, I was surprised they were paying people $100 an hour for FDA regulations from a computer security prospect. I just didn't know those dollar amounts were out there for the FDA, and this was starting from $100 an hour. This job was posted 6 days ago. Medical device quality and compliance expert. And in there, like we talked about, it's talking about the FDA regulation. Software as a medical device, how you would set that up in AWS, so your medical device would be more secure. So that's just a high level. Like I said, once again, I like to take compliance, roll it down actually to cybersecurity. And when you do that check on Linux database, even in the AWS, what does that mean for when you're doing compliance? So that's all I got. Put any questions in the chat. I just want to do compliance. Like I said, once again, we'll have another class on introduction to cybersecurity on Sunday at 3 p.m. Oh, that's cool. Let me know. I'm actually studying for the I forgot what it's called. One of the first AWS Cloud Practitioner, which is the first level of that. So I'm studying for that. I'm hoping to take that at the end of the month. Then I'm actually hoping to start studying for the AWS Architect. So I'm just starting with the Cloud Practitioner. I was surprised when I looked at AWS. They had like 210 AWS services. I'm like, wow, AWS got some for everybody on the planet. Blind got his wife in there, like, so yeah. So I'm studying for the AWS Practitioner. Once again, I do federal level compliance in real life. So I like looking up different compliances. That's really how I make my money, working with the business staff that works with the technical staff to make sure the architecture gets set up correctly so that they can pass a federal audit. So I do have a playlist of different compliances I have. If you're bored and you want to tiptoe on that life, you just check out my playlist. And you can always hit me up on professorblackops@gmail.com, and we could definitely chop it up. I want to wish all the veterans happy Veterans Day. I'm also taking advantage of that, even though I didn't serve. My father was in the Navy for 17 years, so I always give a shout out to those guys. My father died when I was early, like 19. My mom just died 3 years ago at 92, and she was still getting 70% of his benefits. So it's all good. Once again, if you need anything or you want me to go over anything in a video, just shoot me an email. Shout out to Blind Guy, his wife, and their life. Check them out. Person Centered Cyber, check them out. Enterprise Cannabis, definitely dropping knowledge on the AI, ML, machine learning. We definitely got, I definitely got to do a stream on that from cybersecurity using artificial intelligence, especially since AWS has got a ton of those built into some of their current products. So I got that on my list to do. And hell, thanks for joining me. Ty's definitely always in there supporting me. Gail Lockett is the truth. Everybody have a good day. I'm sure I'll see you on other channels. I just want to do a high level compliance. I like the compliance world. It always treats me well, and I like the federal money. It's always good. Everybody have a great Veterans Day. I'm out.